When your kids ask you what to get their mom for her birthday, and your first thought is, how about a lie detector test? You know something's off. Call it intuition, call it instinct, or maybe it's just the lingering scent of someone else's cologne that doesn't match anything I own. Or maybe it was the fact that her laptop, normally locked down like Fort Knox, was left wide open on the kitchen table, still logged into Facebook with a tab labeled, My Escape Plan Face-Blowing Kiss. Next to an online boutique selling designer lingerie I'd never seen on her body. Either way, it was the kind of Tuesday where the universe winks at you with a smirk and slides a dagger slowly into your spine, just deep enough to keep you awake. It started the way these things never should quiet, with breakfast. She made pancakes. She never makes pancakes. Not even on birthdays. She's a toast-and-go woman, a creature of habit and hasty mornings. But that day, she stood in the kitchen like she had something to celebrate. A little too chipper. A little too relieved. The kids were laughing, syrup-drunk and oblivious, but I watched her from behind my coffee cup. Her phone was face down, which was already a silent confession in this house. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. And then she said it, offhand, casual, the kind of thing you toss out and pray doesn't land. We should do something different this year for my birthday. Something just for me. The last word hung in the air like cigarette smoke. I smiled, nodded. But inside, I felt it, the tectonic shift. Something had broken. Not cracked. Broken. That evening, she left her laptop open. That was her first mistake. Or maybe her second. The first was underestimating how observant I can be when I stop pretending not to see. She was in the shower. I didn't snoop. I read what was right in front of me, left open like a confession. A conversation with someone named Daniel. I clicked once, maybe twice. That's all I needed. I saw enough to know I was no longer her husband. I was her cover story, her emotional storage unit, her plan B. And Daniel? Daniel was plan A, her exit strategy. I closed the laptop. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. I just sat there, breathing, listening to the sound of the water running upstairs like it was trying to drown out the truth. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't stab, it seeps. And now it was seeping into everything. That night, she came to bed smelling like eucalyptus and guilt. I turned away, feigned sleep, and made my plan. It didn't take long. The next morning, I sat the kids down, two of them, bright-eyed, still living under the illusion of a happy home. Let's make this birthday special, I said, smiling like I meant it. Let's find her something really personal. Maybe check her browser history, see what she's into lately. They took the bait without hesitation. Kids want to please. Kids love surprise gifts. And kids, when left alone with unfiltered access to the internet and a mission, become little detectives faster than you'd believe. I didn't coach them. I didn't point them. I just left them in the office with her laptop and an open browser and went to mow the lawn. 20 minutes later, the back door creaked open. My son stood there, pale. My daughter looked like she'd swallowed glass. Dad, she said, voice flat, you need to see this. I followed them back inside. On the screen, open messages, pictures, a calendar invite titled Cancun Getaway with D. My daughter clicked the wishlist tab. Things to do after divorce, it read. Number 3, finally sleeping without fake snoring next to me. Number 7, have a real orgasm. Number 10, be free. She'd written her future without us in it. I watched my children process the reality of the woman who'd raised them. Their hero. Their anchor. They looked like someone had taken a red marker to every drawing they'd ever made of this family and scribbled, liar, across it. My son asked the question I'd been waiting for. Why would she do this? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence said enough. That night, she came home and found us quiet, distant. The birthday banner half-hung. The cake untouched. The kids didn't hug her. Didn't look at her. She noticed. She asked. I said nothing. Let her stew. Let her wonder. Because now, the truth was no longer mine to carry. It was theirs. And unlike love, betrayal spreads best when you don't force it. You just open the door and let it breathe. They say the most dangerous storm is the one that doesn't announce itself with thunder. That was her. No slamming doors, no screaming matches, no dramatic accusations. Just a shift, subtle, almost surgical. Like waking up one morning and realizing the paintings on the walls have been rearranged, but no one admits to touching them. We used to fall asleep in conversation, voices fading mid-thought, too comfortable to finish. But over time, her voice stopped searching for mine in the dark. She started sleeping with her back to me, arms folded like a question I wasn't allowed to ask. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, but her lips never pressed down. They hovered, like a formality, like a signature on a check she knew would bounce. It started with the gym. She'd never been one for routines, said she hated the pressure, hated the mirrors, but suddenly, she had a trainer named Brett and sessions at odd hours. Early mornings. Late nights. She'd come home flushed, not tired but buzzing, like she'd swallowed lightning. She stopped wearing her old sweatshirts and started showing skin again, dressing like the younger version of herself she used to mock. I complimented her, of course I did. I meant it. She looked incredible, radiant. But the compliments seemed to bounce off her like water on wax. She thanked me without looking up from her phone, scrolling, always scrolling. She changed her lock screen. It used to be a family photo from that trip to the lake, the kids, her, me, all frozen in a moment that felt real. Then one day it was just flowers. White lilies. Cold. Beautiful. Impersonal. Then came the talk of boundaries. She started using words like emotional bandwidth and mental clutter. I joked that she'd picked them up from a podcast. She didn't laugh. Instead, she started listening to them with earbuds in, nodding silently while I tried to talk to her. She'd sit on the porch in the evening, journaling. Not our usual glass of wine conversations about the day, no. She needed time alone with her thoughts. So I gave it to her. I told myself she was healing something. Maybe something I'd missed. Maybe she just needed space. Love is supposed to expand for growth, right? That's what we're told. That's the dream. So I let her grow. But her growth had a speed limit, and I wasn't keeping up. She started making purchases, nothing flashy at first. A new phone. A second gym membership, just in case. Then dresses, perfumes I didn't recognize, lingerie I never saw her wear. When I asked about the credit card bills, she told me not to worry, that she'd started managing her own finances for clarity. Clarity. That word again. Like I was a fog she needed to push through. The strangest shift came with her social media. She was never a heavy poster, but we'd always had access to each other's accounts. Not because of distrust, just mutual transparency. Then one day, I couldn't see her Instagram anymore. Said the account was private. When I asked about it, she told me it must be a glitch. Then she changed the subject and kissed me like a mother kisses a son on graduation day. Proud. Distant. Final. There was one afternoon, late fall, when I found a scarf in her car. It wasn't hers. Wrong color, wrong scent. It smelled like a man. Not cologne, just a man. Musk and mint and something earthy. She said it was a coworker's wife's, left behind after a lunch outing. I nodded. I didn't press. I didn't want to know. I told myself I trusted her. That trust was the ground we walked on, and to dig into it would mean falling through. But the cracks were there. Hairline fractures spreading through the silence. I'd reach for her hand at dinner, and she'd flinch, not pull away, just enough of a pause to make my stomach turn. Her texts became shorter, drier. She stopped sending emojis. That might seem small, but when someone stops sending hearts after "I love you," it feels like a door being closed slowly enough for you to watch. She began planning things without me. Trips with her friends. Weekend retreats. Book clubs. Late meetings. Always with a vague tone, like she was leaving me out for my own good. Once she said, "I don't want to feel like I'm asking permission every time I want to breathe." That one hit hard. Because I'd never told her no. Not once. I'd supported every dream, every whim, every half-finished plan. But now my support was suffocating, apparently. I watched her fade from our life like someone turning down the volume on a song we used to dance to. She still smiled, but that smile no longer included me. It was for someone else. For something else. I just didn't know what, yet. But the thing about storms? They always give you warning if you're listening. And I had started listening. It was a Tuesday, which felt appropriate. Betrayal never waits for weekends. I had just gotten home early from work, the kind of rare lull in the chaos where you imagine surprising your wife, maybe even reconnecting over takeout and a glass of wine. I parked in the driveway and saw her car already there, which was strange. She had texted me just 30 minutes before saying she was still at the office, running late. At first, I thought maybe she'd come home for something and forgot to tell me. No big deal. But then I stepped into the house and everything felt wrong. Not messy. Not loud. Just off. That unsettling kind of quiet, like someone had just left the room but their scent hadn't. Her purse was on the counter. Her heels were near the door. There was a fresh cup of coffee, my favorite blend, oddly enough, half finished on the kitchen table. And her phone. She had left her phone, wide open, screen still glowing. That's what did it. That's what tore the fabric. Because her phone was sacred. Her phone was never out of reach, never unlocked, never left alone like that. I didn't touch it at first. I stood there, just looking, watching the message preview scroll across the top. I miss your mouth. From someone named Dean. Not a coworker. Not a family friend. No last name. Just Dean. And underneath it, another message. Your husband bought you that red dress? You wore it for me. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel sorrow. I didn't feel anything. I just picked up the phone like it was a ticking bomb and scrolled. Dozens of messages. Voice notes. Photos, explicit, intimate, detailed. There was one of her lying in the bed we share. Bed sheets I had laundered 2 days ago, wearing nothing but the smile I used to think belonged to me. There was a video too, and I didn't watch it. I didn't need to. The thumbnail was enough. I placed the phone back down exactly where it had been and looked around the house like I was seeing it for the first time. Everything suddenly felt staged. The framed photos of our wedding. The family portrait above the fireplace. The live laugh love sign she made me hang in the hallway last spring. It all felt like a set. A lie so carefully curated that I hadn't noticed the rot underneath. That was the moment. Right then. I felt something inside me seal shut. Like a steel door slamming inside my chest. No noise. No panic. Just click. I walked upstairs, quietly, and I could hear the shower running. She was singing. Humming some stupid pop song, completely unaware that her whole life was now under audit. I stood outside the bathroom door and listened to her hum while I stared at the laundry basket nearby. On top was the red dress, rumpled, faintly scented with perfume and sweat. Not mine. Not ours. His. She hadn't even bothered to hide it. I walked back downstairs and sat on the couch, hands steepled under my chin, eyes locked on nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I simply thought. And as I stared at the muted television, a plan began to form. Not vengeance. Not yet. First, there had to be clarity. Control. Timing. Because now I understood, I wasn't married to a woman anymore. I was living with a liar in drag. A woman who wore the mask of a wife so well that even her children hadn't noticed it slipping. But I had. And now, it was my turn to slip into character. The loyal husband. The supportive father. The man who didn't suspect a thing. I would play my part to perfection. Smile when expected. Not on cue. But inside, I was done. Detached. Watching her with the cold distance of a coroner examining a body that hadn't stopped twitching yet. The war hadn't started, but I was already drawing the battlefield. I knew what I had to do. And I knew exactly where it would hurt her the most. Because the only thing more brutal than being betrayed is showing her children the truth and letting them decide who she really is. I became a ghost in my own house, not the kind that moans through walls or slams doors in anger, but the kind that lingers in corners, watching, memorizing, collecting every inconsistency like drops of water in a leaking bucket. The key was never to confront, never to show a shift in rhythm. She had to keep believing she was in control. So I played dumb. I kissed her forehead in the morning, packed the kids' lunches, and asked about her day with the same gentle curiosity I always had. But behind every word, I was calculating, watching her eyes, timing her pauses, picking apart her stories like rotten fruit. She said she had a client dinner on Thursday. I offered to pick her up afterward. She declined, said she'd get a ride. I nodded, smiled. And 30 minutes later, while she was still in the bathroom getting ready, I used her phone to airdrop its GPS feed to an old iPad hidden in my closet. Just like that. I knew everywhere she went without her ever knowing she'd let me in. When Thursday came, she left the house in that same red dress, pressed, perfect, weaponized. I waited until the kids were asleep, then opened the iPad. She was nowhere near the restaurant she mentioned. The little blue dot pulsed near a residential block in the far side of town, middle of nowhere, no restaurants, no offices, just silence and streetlights. I said nothing. I closed the app and went to bed. When she returned after midnight, smelling like another man's breath, I didn't flinch. I just murmured, "Did the client dinner go well?" and watched her lie with practiced ease. "Yeah, we had dessert at this amazing place. You would have loved it," she said, kicking off her heels. I told her we should go sometime. She smiled. I memorized that smile. It was the last time I ever saw it as genuine. From that moment on, every word she said was a thread, and I pulled them all. Slowly. Carefully. I called her office one afternoon, pretending to be a delivery man from a flower shop. Her assistant answered. She's out for a few days on personal time, she said cheerfully. That was news to me. She'd told me she was working late that night. I thanked her, hung up, and drove past the office myself just to be sure. Her car wasn't there. The next day, I logged into our joint bank account while she was at the gym and found charges at restaurants we'd never been to, gas stations 40 miles away, and a small Airbnb transaction she never mentioned, labeled business travel. Cute. I copied the address and saved it. A week later, I dropped by while she was visiting her sister and saw her car parked out front, curtains drawn. I didn't knock. I didn't make a scene. I just stood across the street and watched. 40 minutes later, a man I'd never seen before walked out, stretching, shirtless, like he belonged to her. I took a photo. Just one. That was all I needed. I started laying traps, small ones, clever ones. I asked her one morning if she still talked to her old friend Lauren, just to see what she'd say. All the time, she replied. She just texted me last night. Funny. I'd already spoken to Lauren the day before. She hadn't heard from my wife in over 2 months. I smiled, thanked her, and crossed another lie off the list. I created a burner Instagram account, used it to follow Daniel. Yes, that Daniel, the one from the texts. His profile was public. He posted a story one night from a rooftop bar I knew she loved, with a wine glass in the foreground and a woman's hand, her hand, resting across the table. The same bracelet I bought her for our 10th anniversary. I sent her a message that night, nothing more than, hope you're staying warm tonight, and she replied instantly, just curled up with a book. Miss you. That was when I knew she didn't just lie. She excelled at it. I checked the search history on our home Wi-Fi. Most people forget that routers store everything. Late-night searches, how to separate finances without spouse knowing, divorce timeline without confrontation, best couples getaway for secret affairs. I screenshotted them all. And still, I said nothing. She would come home, kiss my cheek, ask about the kids, and I would answer like a man half asleep, content. But I was wide awake. A hawk perched on a branch, waiting. I even suggested we take a weekend trip together to reconnect. She declined. Said she had work obligations. Said she needed a little more space. I agreed. I gave her all the space in the world. Enough for her to hang herself in it. I watched her install new apps on her phone, hiding messages in folder vaults labeled fitness and recipes. I mirrored the phone's data to an old desktop in the garage, one she never used. I didn't need to guess anymore. I knew everything. But the final piece came unexpectedly from the kids. One night, she left her phone on the kitchen counter again, careless in her confidence. My daughter picked it up to ask her a question about a song she was playing, and before I could stop her, she turned to me and asked, Dad, who's Baby D? That name was flashing on the lock screen with a heart emoji. My wife sprinted over, laughing too hard, too loud, brushing it off. Just a silly nickname, she said, ruffling our daughter's hair. But the way our daughter looked at her, confused, almost hurt, that was when I knew it was time. I wasn't just uncovering the truth anymore. I was preparing to deliver it, one piece at a time, through the people she never expected would turn on her, through the children she took for granted. She didn't know it yet, but she was already standing in the center of the stage. And I was about to raise the curtain. The day I decided to expose her wasn't chosen at random. It was their one-year affair anniversary, according to the text she thought she'd deleted, and I wanted her to celebrate it in style. I booked a table for 4 at a quiet rooftop restaurant she always claimed was too expensive for a normal night out. I told her it was just us and the kids, a little surprise dinner before her supposed business trip the next morning. What she didn't know was that I'd already sent the kids to stay with my sister for the weekend, and the 4th seat wasn't for them, it was for Daniel, the man she'd been sacrificing her family for. Invited personally by me from a burner number pretending to be her, complete with a fake hotel booking and a promise she never actually made. I arrived early, requested the corner table, tipped the waiter generously to follow my signal, and waited. She walked in wearing that same red dress, the one that used to mean something to me, now just a funeral color for our marriage. She smiled when she saw me, probably thinking this was some pathetic attempt at winning her back. I stood, pulled out her chair like a gentleman, and she sat across from me with that polished composure only a practiced liar can maintain. We ordered wine. She talked about how this was nice, unexpected, but nice. I nodded. Agreed. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope, nothing fancy, just standard white, sealed. I placed it on the table between us. She glanced at it like it might bite. What's this? She asked, already shifting in her seat. A collection of firsts, I replied. She didn't touch it at first, just stared at me. I gave a slow nod, and she opened it. Inside were 10 printed photographs, each one more damning than the last. Her hand in Daniel's on a hiking trail she said she took with her coworkers. Her lips on his outside a bar she told me she hated. A selfie of the two of them in the Airbnb she booked for a wellness retreat. Her fingers trembled slightly as she shuffled through them. And then came the line, predictable as ever, "It's not what you think." I sipped my wine. "No?" I asked. "Enlighten me." She tried again. "We were just talking. It wasn't serious." I raised an eyebrow. "Talking? With your mouth on his neck?" Her eyes darted, scanning the restaurant like someone looking for a fire escape. "It was a mistake. It just happened. I wasn't planning to." I cut her off, calmly. "A year's worth of mistake? Weekly mistake? Hotel booking, kids lying, GPS scrambling mistake." She blinked, and that's when the real shift started. Her mask slipped, just a little. "You weren't there," she snapped. "You stopped caring. I was alone in this marriage." There it was, the blame. She pushed the photos aside like they were napkins. "You made me feel invisible." I leaned in, voice steady as ice. "You weren't invisible. You were just too busy performing for someone else to notice you were already seen." That stung. She recoiled. "So what now? You want a medal for finding out?" Her tone changed again, arrogant now, smug, like someone who thinks they still have leverage. "You think this makes you strong? You had to dig through my life like a coward." I smiled. "No digging. Just watching. You handed me everything on a silver platter. I just waited for you to serve the final course." She folded her arms, scoffing. "You think you can hurt me with this? Go ahead. Tell everyone. I'll say you were controlling. I'll say you neglected me. I'll say anything I need to." There was the threat, the desperation, the last weapon of a drowning liar, image control. "You won't need to," I replied, setting down my wine glass with precision. "I'm not telling anyone anything." She blinked. That scared her. "You're not." I shook my head. "No. You are. You're going to explain this to your kids. You're going to tell them why their mother kissed a stranger while lying about late meetings. You're going to look them in the eye and explain why you threw away their father like a broken clock just to feel young again." Her mouth opened. No sound came out. "You'll tell them. Or I will. And unlike you, I don't need to lie." The waiter arrived right on cue, placing 2 desserts on the table, compliments of the house. Her hands were shaking now. "Why are you doing this here?" she hissed, low and frantic. "Why would you?" I interrupted. "Because Daniel will be here any minute. I thought he'd like to join us. You know, since he's so involved in our family plans these days." Her face turned colorless. "You're lying." I pulled out my phone, showed her the text thread. "See for yourself." Her mouth twitched. Her hands fumbled for her purse. I could feel the pressure around us thickening, the kind of tension that makes waiters slow down and other guests look away. But I didn't move. I didn't chase. I didn't gloat. I just watched her sit in that seat, skin buzzing with the realization that every lie she built was now collapsing on her in real time, and there was no script left to follow. She had played every card: denial, blame, mockery, fear. And now, silence. She looked at me not like a husband, not like an enemy, but like a stranger she had misjudged entirely. And I just stared back, calm, unreadable, waiting not for her to run, not for her to cry, but for her to understand. The moment we left the restaurant, she snapped like a stretched wire, finally giving way. No more measured words, no more excuses, just venom. "You smothered me," she spat as soon as we hit the parking lot, heels clicking like gunshots across the pavement. "You were always there, always watching, always needing me to be your perfect little wife, and I was drowning." I didn't flinch. I just unlocked the car. She stormed in behind me, slamming the door harder than necessary. "Say something," she hissed, face red with rage. I started the engine, looked forward. No, silence, the kind that drives narcissists insane. She couldn't handle it. "You're just going to sit there? After all that? What do you want from me? A confession?" "Fine, I slept with him. I liked it. He made me feel alive, something you haven't done in years." Still, I drove. Calm. Unbothered. "Then why are you here with me right now?" I asked quietly. That shut her up for half a second, but only to reload. "Because I thought you were man enough to fight for me. But you're just empty. You're boring. Predictable. No passion. No fight. You think being calm makes you strong, but you're just weak." That's why he was better. I turned to her for the first time since we'd gotten in the car. "If he was better, you'd be with him tonight. But you're not. You're sitting in a car with the man who knows exactly what you are now." Her face twisted, fury morphing into something less defined. You don't know me, she growled. You never did. If you did, maybe I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere. I nodded slowly. You're right. I didn't know you. But I know enough now to realize I don't need to. She laughed then, that high, bitter laugh that people use when they realize the joke's on them. You think you're winning? You think this cold, stoic act makes you powerful? You're just a coward hiding behind silence. I didn't respond. I pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. She stared at me, eyes wild, waiting for something, anything. A crack in the mask, a flicker of pain. But she got nothing. That scared her more than if I'd screamed. She followed me inside, pacing behind like a shadow losing its anchor. I gave you everything, she yelled suddenly, the guilt tripping now oozing from every word. I raised your children. I kept this house running. I sacrificed my dreams. And you? You just watched it happen. I looked at her dead calm. You didn't sacrifice. You traded. And now the return isn't what you expected. That cut her deeper than anything else I'd said. She staggered slightly, like I'd slapped her without moving. You're heartless, she muttered, tears forming. But they were for her, not for what she did. You're just going to throw away everything we built? I walked past her to the stairs, pausing only to say, You already did. I'm just sweeping up the pieces. That sent her over the edge. She ran after me, grabbed my arm, nails digging in. Don't walk away from me, she screamed. You owe me a chance to explain. I turned slowly. You had a year to explain. You used that time to lie. That debt's been paid in full. She backed off, breathing heavy, eyes darting, looking for a new angle. Fine, she hissed. I'll tell the kids you're leaving us. I'll make sure they know who walked away. I stared at her, expressionless. Tell them. And when they ask why, I'll show them the proof. Let them decide who abandoned who. Her face went pale. She knew I meant it. She knew I had it all. You're not even human, she whispered. You're just some empty shell with no soul. I smiled slightly. No, I just stopped feeding yours. She stood there in the hallway, shaking, furious, unraveling, watching as every manipulative tactic she'd perfected fell flat. The denial had failed. The blame had failed. Even the insults, the twisted logic, the crocodile tears, none of it could touch me now. Because I didn't care anymore. And that was the one thing she never prepared for. Indifference. True, impenetrable indifference. She could have handled hatred. She would have thrived in a shouting match. But this quiet, steady withdrawal of emotional oxygen, it was her undoing. She reached for one final jab, voice trembling. You were never enough. I looked at her, steady, emotionless. And yet, somehow, I was still too much for you. I turned and walked upstairs without another word, leaving her alone in the dark hallway, drowning in the silence of her own failure, trapped in a house full of memories she'd poisoned, and suddenly realizing that the man she betrayed had not only seen everything, he had walked away without looking back. Revenge, real revenge, isn't fire, it's ice. It's patience, timing, precision. It's not about shouting or slamming doors or setting the house on fire while she watches. It's about watching her house sink inch by inch while she stands on the porch still sipping wine, not realizing the foundation is gone. The moment I decided I wasn't just going to leave, but destroy her, I became surgical. Cold. Clean. The first step was information. I gathered every scrap of evidence, every text, photo, timestamped GPS coordinate, bank transaction, hotel receipt. I backed it all up in 3 places, 2 encrypted flash drives, and 1 offline storage vault in a locked drawer at work. I printed select screenshots, the ones where she admitted to the affair, mocked me, detailed how she'd lied to the kids. Not all of it, just enough to crush her credibility. I visited a lawyer, not for advice, but for execution. Quietly filed the divorce papers, listed the grounds as adultery, and built a case for full custody, her deception, abandonment, the neglect masked as self-discovery. I was calm in that office. Methodical. No tears, no ranting. Just facts. The lawyer looked at me like I was a surgeon describing how I'd remove a tumor. He said he'd never seen a client this composed. I told him, emotion is what gets you manipulated. Strategy is what gets you free. Step 2 was resources. I pulled my name off every joint account and froze them with a phone call and a notarized document. I opened new accounts in my name only. The next morning, I transferred my paycheck, rerouted the mortgage, cut her off from credit lines she hadn't touched yet, and canceled every card I knew she hid in drawers for emergencies. The car in her name? Repossessed by the bank within 3 days after I withdrew the last payment from our account. Utilities? Transferred. Insurance policies? Adjusted. I even removed her as my emergency contact. Small, symbolic, satisfying. I reclaimed a house, not with force, but with facts, documenting every night she didn't sleep there. Every weekend she was away with friends, while I cared for the kids. The home was mine before she ever cheated, legally, financially. She was a guest now. I gave her 30 days to leave, served formally through my lawyer. Step 3 was exposure, and that was my favorite. I never made a scene. I never screamed in public. I just sent polite, concise messages. To her parents, thought you should be aware of what's happening in your daughter's life. I'm filing for divorce due to her long-term infidelity. If you'd like to maintain a relationship with the children, let me know. Attached, one photo. No explanation. Her mother called me crying. Her father never responded, but I saw that he unfriended her on Facebook within the hour. I sent her employer a brief, factual letter detailing the affair with a vendor linked to a recent contract bid, attaching receipts that placed them in the same hotel room the night before final negotiations. I didn't ask for anything. I simply thought they should be aware of a potential conflict of interest that could affect company liability. HR called her in for a conversation. She came home shaking. Step 4 was the kids. I never poisoned them. I never said a bad word about their mother. I just answered questions when they came. When they asked why she wasn't at the school play, I said she had other priorities that night. When my son found the messages and brought them to me, I sat with him, let him cry, told him, the truth is heavy, but it's better than a beautiful lie. When she tried to guilt them into calling her more, I simply said, they'll reach out when they're ready. Don't force it. I watched the distance grow, not because I told them anything, but because she had already made the choice to put someone else first. I just stopped shielding her from the consequences. She didn't spiral all at once. It was gradual, like someone watching their reflection fade from a mirror. First came the confusion, why her cards stopped working, why her coworkers were acting strange, why her family stopped calling back. Then came the panic. She texted me 8 times in one night, called 3 more. I didn't respond. Finally, the confrontation, her showing up at my doorstep, mascara running, voice trembling. What the hell did you do? I stood in the doorway, calm, composed, suit pressed from work, and simply said, I did what you never could. I cleaned up the mess. I didn't let her in. That was no longer her home. She was a memory now, a shadow, a warning. By the time she realized I'd stripped her of everything she took for granted, it was too late to scream. And the worst part for her wasn't the loss. It was the realization that I never raised my voice, never threw a single punch, never even called her a name. I just showed her who the real adult in the room was. And by then, she was already too far beneath me to climb back out. It happened on a Sunday, fitting, really, considering she always dressed like a saint for brunch with her family, hiding the sinner behind pearls and faux modesty. I chose that day because it was her safe space, her curated kingdom of control, where she performed for her parents, smiled for her sister, played the doting wife and loving mother over mimosas and French toast. I arrived first, with the kids, dressed sharp and quiet, greeted like royalty by a family that once believed their daughter could do no wrong. She walked in 15 minutes later, right on cue, laughter echoing through the entrance as she clung to her best friend on one side and the arm of her newly distant father on the other. Her eyes met mine, and there was something smug there, like she thought this was a reconciliation dinner, a show of unity, a scene she could spin later with teary eyes and shaky hands. She didn't see the ice behind my stillness. She didn't notice the empty seat next to her father. She didn't clock the silence, the way her mother's smile never reached her eyes. The table was already set, literally and figuratively. In front of each seat was a single cream-colored envelope. Nothing extravagant, just elegant enough to unsettle. She paused, frowning, and glanced around. What's this? She asked, tone still breezy, a performance voice. Her sister didn't answer. Her best friend didn't answer. Her father leaned back, arms crossed. Read it, I said calmly, folding my hands. Her fingers twitched as she slid the envelope open and pulled out the contents, 8 printed photos, time-stamped messages, a hotel bill with her signature, a screenshot of her laughing at me with her lover via text. For a second, her face didn't move. She blinked once, twice, then glanced up and said the words she always used when cornered. This is being taken out of context. Her mother exhaled sharply through her nose, like she'd just swallowed a lie that burned going down. Her best friend stood up and walked away. Not a word. Just left the table, heels clicking, head down. Her father looked at her with disgust so clean it didn't need volume. "Is that how you raised our children?" he asked. She tried to speak, but no sound came. The room was watching now. Not just our table, the room. Other brunchers turning their heads, servers slowing down, I starting. She laughed, too loud, too fast, and tried again. "This is ridiculous," she said. "I mean, are we really doing this here? What is this, a public execution?" "No," I replied. "This is the funeral. The execution already happened. You just didn't notice when." Her smile faltered. It twitched at the edges. Her voice cracked when she spoke next. "You're enjoying this," she whispered, low, venomous. "You want to watch me squirm. That's what this is." "No," I said. "I want you to see what you built fall apart in front of you, piece by piece." Her hands started shaking. Her mother slid the photos across the table, back to her, as if even touching them had left a stain. "You lied to us," she said. "You used us." Her sister stared down at her lap, cheeks red. Her father stood. "We're done covering for you." Then, from behind her, the final blow. Daniel. He walked in through the side door, early for his usual reservation, unaware of the storm waiting for him. Her eyes widened when she saw him, the panic rising like bile in her throat. She stood too fast, stumbled forward. "Daniel," she gasped. He looked confused, then noticed the photos in her hand. He looked at me. I nodded once. He looked at her again, then shook his head slowly and turned right back around, walking out the same door he entered. Just like that. No scene. No goodbye. Just silence. The kind that drowns. She collapsed into the chair like the weight of her own story had finally crushed her spine. Her face was pale, eyes glassy. Her mouth opened and closed, no sound. She looked at me, finally, really looked, and what she saw there wasn't anger. It wasn't hurt. It wasn't love. It was freedom. Calm, quiet, unshakable freedom. I didn't flinch. I didn't smirk. I just watched. And she broke. Right there, in the middle of that perfect little brunch place, the woman who had once controlled every conversation, every room, every narrative fell apart. Her breath hitched, her hands clawed at the napkin like it could hide her shame, and the tears came. Ugly, choking sobs that silenced the room. She tried to stand, stumbled again, and this time, no one moved to help her. Not her family. Not the staff. Not even me. She sat there, weeping, unraveling in real time. And I stayed. I didn't leave. I didn't storm out. I stayed seated, sipping my coffee, unbothered, watching the woman who thought she could burn down my life finally realize she was the only one standing in the flames. It happened at her sister's engagement party, of all places, another sparkling lie draped in champagne and fairy lights, another room full of people pretending everything was picture perfect. She walked in late, dressed like nothing had happened, like she hadn't been exposed in front of her family and coworkers, like her career and reputation weren't already dangling off a cliff. I stood near the bar, sipping ginger ale, talking with her father, who still hadn't forgiven the fact that she turned his name into a punchline behind hotel doors. And then she saw me. The fake smile slipped for half a second before she pasted it back on, teeth clenched behind glossed lips. "We need to talk," she hissed through the side of her mouth, grabbing my arm like she had a claim to it. "Not here." But I didn't move. "Why not here?" I said, loud enough for a few heads to turn. Everything else happened in front of an audience. She flinched, eyes scanning the room. "You're making a scene." "No," I said. "You made the scene. I'm just finally giving it a spotlight." That was the fuse. She stepped back, hands shaking, voice rising. "You're bitter because I found someone who actually saw me," she snapped. "You ignored me for years. You made me feel like a ghost in my own home." Murmurs started bubbling in the crowd. Her mother looked mortified. Her sister whispered something to her fiancé. "You felt invisible," I said, stepping forward. "So your solution was to become a liar? To crawl into someone else's bed and pretend you were reborn? That's not self-discovery. That's cowardice and lipstick." She gasped, then laughed, manic, cracked, desperate. "You're unbelievable. You really think you're some kind of saint? You were cold. Emotionless. Always so damn controlled. I needed passion. I needed life. So you found it between someone else's sheets?" I snapped back. "You didn't want passion. You wanted validation. You wanted someone dumb enough to fall for the edited version of you, the one who still pretends she's the victim in the wreck she caused." Now the room was silent. People weren't whispering anymore. They were watching. Phones were out. Her best friend stood frozen near the gift table. Her father's jaw was clenched so tight his neck veins showed. And then she went for it, her last weapon, the nuclear option. He was better than you in every way, she sneered, loud, too loud. He listened, he touched me, he made me feel like a woman, not just a maid and a babysitter. There were gasps. Her cousin put her hand over her mouth. One of my brothers muttered, "Wow," under his breath. I stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her chin to meet my eyes. "Then where is he now?" I asked, softly. "If he was so much better, why did he run the second I sent him the same proof I gave your boss? Why did he block your number before you could even beg?" Her breath hitched. Her face went pale. She hadn't known I'd done that. You're sick," she whispered. "No," I said. "I'm just done being your safety net. You climbed into the fire, and now you want to blame me for letting you burn." She screamed then, a high, sharp, a sound that didn't belong to the person she used to be. "You manipulated everything. You twisted this whole thing to make me look like the monster. You didn't need help with that," I said. "You did it all on your own. I just made sure the right people saw it." And then her mother, the woman who once told me I was the best thing that ever happened to her daughter, stepped forward and said, "That's enough, both of you." But her voice was trembling, her eyes fixed on her daughter like she didn't recognize the woman standing in front of her. "Is it true?" she asked. "Did you really?" She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Her daughter broke then, visibly shoulders slumping, hands open like she could still catch something before it hit the floor. "I didn't mean to," she started, voice cracking. I felt like no one saw me anymore." "You were seen," I said. "You were loved. You were trusted. And you destroyed it for the thrill of being wanted by someone who didn't even stay for the fallout." She looked around the room then, and for the first time, no one looked back with warmth. No sympathy. No excuses. Just the kind of silence that wraps around you like a verdict. Her sister turned away. Her best friend avoided eye contact. Her father walked out. She stood alone, clutching her glass like it was the last piece of her reality. And I didn't move. I stood there, calm, steady, letting her see me watching, still watching, because that was the part she could never endure. The knowing, the judgment, the eyes of the man who knew her better than anyone, standing tall while she came apart in front of the people she once used to perform for. She wanted to scream, wanted to run, but there was nowhere left to go. Her empire was ashes. Her mask was shattered. And I didn't have to say another word. The silence said everything. She moved out 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized. Though calling it a move is generous, she vanished, really, slipping out of the house one morning with 2 suitcases and no goodbye, her car packed like a fugitive's. Like she couldn't stand to breathe the same air one more second. Her parents wouldn't take her in, not after the messages I sent, not after the confrontation at brunch, not after she stood there shaking while her own father called her a disgrace to the family name. Her mother blocked her on everything, her sister wouldn't return calls, and even her childhood best friend, who once stood as maid of honor in our wedding, deleted every photo of her off social media. The fall was fast and merciless. She lost her job first, officially let go due to company restructuring, but everyone knew the truth. You can't have your name floating around an HR scandal and expect executive promotion. Word spreads fast in small circles. Her photos came down from the office wall, her email deactivated, her desk cleared out by an intern. Within days, she went from being the golden girl to a cautionary tale. Her friends, the ones who loved her witty captions and curated vacation photos, quietly disappeared. No comments. No likes. Her Instagram turned from a highlight reel to a ghost town. No one replied to her stories. She tried reaching out to mutual friends, the ones she thought would sympathize, but they had already seen the folder. The screenshots. The receipts. The silence was their answer. She messaged me a few times. At first, it was predictable. You're not innocent either. Then, you turned everyone against me. Eventually, it became, I miss you. I still love you. Can we talk? I didn't answer. Not once. I read every message. Let them sit there, unread by her but seen by me, like little gravestones for the woman she used to be. I heard through a friend that she moved 2 towns over, into a tiny 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. She took a job at a marketing firm no one had ever heard of. Cash flow dried up fast when you lose access to joint accounts, brand partnerships, career reputation, and social capital in one swoop. The affair partner, Daniel, ghosted her within days of the fallout. The moment secrecy turned to exposure, He deleted his socials, changed his number, and never looked back. No dramatic breakup. No apology. Just disappearance. I imagine it hit her in waves, the silence of her phone, the weight of an empty inbox, the slow unraveling of the world she once controlled with a smile and a lie. A month ago, she came to the house. I saw her through the peephole before she even knocked. Same hoodie she wore in college, hair tied back, eyes red and swollen like she'd been crying for days. She stood there for a long time, staring at the door, probably rehearsing her lines. When she finally knocked, it was soft. Pathetic. Like she knew she had no right. I opened it. Just enough for her to see me. She blinked, tears already rolling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was stupid. I ruined everything. I didn't know what I was doing. Please. I don't even recognize myself anymore." Her voice cracked, and she reached out, like maybe I'd take her hand. I looked at it, then looked back at her. Calm. Cold. Clear. "You're right," I said. "I don't recognize you either." And then I closed the door. That was the last time I saw her face to face. Every now and then, a message slips through. "I miss the way you used to look at me. Can we just talk? Please. I'm so sorry." I never block her. I let the messages come. Let them pile up like unsent letters to a man who doesn't live here anymore. Because I don't. The man she left behind died the day she made her choice. The man she's messaging now is just the one who cleaned up the mess. Rebuilt. Moved on. Not in spite, but because of her. The final message I ever sent her was short. No cruelty. No anger. Just truth. She'd said, "I still love you." I replied, "Strange. I don't even remember your name anymore." That was it. That was the last chapter. And now it's yours too. Thanks for sticking with me through the storm. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Did the story hit the way you expected, or harder? Let me know. I've got more. Always.